God created a planet and named it Eden. Eastward in Eden he planted a garden. Within the garden he created all of the animals that have ever existed. The God made a man. For the man God made a woman. Within the garden God planted 2 trees. One tree God called the tree of life. From this tree the man and the woman could eat freely. The other tree God called the tree or the knowledge of good and evil. From this tree God told the man and the woman not to eat, but they did not listen, and so God put them out of the garden and away from the tree of life. The couple had children, and as the population grew they spread out across Eden. Because they had eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, mankind knew evil, and sadly most chose evil over the good they also knew. God looked to see if there were any who did not choose evil. He found a man named Noah, Noah's wife and his. And he set a plan in motion to save them from the rest. God told Noah to build a very large boat, an ark. God drew the young animals from all over Eden to Noah's land, where they gathered and waited. Once the boat was ready, God sent the very first rainstorms that Eden had ever known. The rains fell, the waters rose, the boat floated. Torrential rains fell for 40 days and nights until the waters covered even the highest mountains. It was 150 days before the waters subsided enough that Noah's boat settled onto a mountain called Ararat. The weight of the water upon Eden had been crushing. It caused the land to heave up in places and to drop low in places. It broke the mantle of Eden in several places. As Eden soaked up the water that covered it, further disruption was caused. Volcanoes formed and began to create lava. Their ash plumes darkened all of Eden. The temperature of Eden dropped. For the first time ice began to form in both the north and the south. For a few hundred years the ice built thicker and thicker until at last it started migrating closer to the very heart of Eden. Eventually Eden could no longer take the strain. Eden's mantle began to tear apart. Eden broke into several pieces. The waters of the flood made the mantle softer. In all they soaked up over 7 times the water that filled its oceans. The ice of the poles grew still larger. Their weight further pushing down on the mantle, bringing the mantle ever closer to Eden's molten core. Bedrock that had stood since the beginning began to soften, to tear, to mix and remold in ways it never had. Molten rock and metals rose up from the core and pushed up through the mantle, further misshaping the surface of Eden. Earthquakes and volcanoes became commonplace and Eden seemed doomed. Noah's children and grandchildren moved about, keeping to the safer areas far away from all the upheaval. They became keepers of livestock and farmers. It took many hundreds of years for the waters that had been upon Eden to soak into the mantle or be taken up to form still more ice. Gradually Eden warmed, but it would be thousands of years before the ice floes melted and were also soaked up into the mantle. In the meantime, mankind forgot about the parts of Eden that had drifted or been pushed away from the center. Eventually they took to the oceans in boats and rediscovered these long-lost areas of land and their abundance of fish, animals and massive forests. With these discoveries came the settling of these new lands. But few choose to remember Eden or the warning in its destruction. Rather, their archaeologists made up fanciful tales to explain away the global flood. They told of mankind having descended from apes and asteroids which destroyed all animal life. But for those who trust in the God of Eden, Eden is still remembered as the garden where mankind lived in harmony with their Creator.